The very first thing you will want to do to access the vector system is to log into your dashboard. Now, some mutuals actually provide a direct link to the dashboard from their mutual website. And another method where you can always access your dashboard is through our website directly, which is www.imtapps.com. And you can see that I'm on that screen right now. In the right-hand corner of my page, there's a sign-in button. I'm going to go ahead and click Sign In. Now, since I am already signed into my dashboard, you'll see it brings me directly there. If you were not signed in, it would prompt you for your username and your password. Once you enter that information, you will then see your dashboard. For our purposes today, we are talking about the vector system, and we're going to focus on this quotes/apps button as well as the new quote button. What the quote/apps button does is it allows you, the agent, to search for quotes or applications you've already begun. So let's say you go ahead and start a quote today. You don't get an opportunity to finish it, but you want to pick it back up tomorrow. You could simply come out here. You could search for it based on the name you've given it, the type of policy type it is, whether something is a quote or application, and so on. Primarily though, since Vector will be used for new business, the button most likely to be used the majority of the time is this new quote button. So I'm going to go ahead and click new quote. When I do that, it's going to bring me to the very first screen in Vector, which is the policy screen. Now, before I start actually building a quote here, I just want to take a moment to point out these three different tabs over here on the left. The first tab, the Messages tab, this is where you're going to find general information the mutual has provided for you, the agents, based on the screen you're viewing. So in just a moment, you'll see an example when we advance forward to a different screen, how my message will change because I'm on a different screen. But again, look for this Messages section to be general information tied to whatever screen you're viewing. The Help tab here actually correlates to the little circles with a question mark inside that you'll find throughout Vector. Primarily, though, this is where you're going to find more coverage-specific information. So, for example, let's say I add a certain dwelling code. If the mutual has added specific help text to that code, it's going to automatically populate for you, the agent, to see. If no help text has been added, you'll simply see a little help message here that says no help available. Finally, the third tab is the Errors tab. This is essentially where the system has detected something that's gone wrong. Now, this may be something you, the agent, have done incorrectly in Vector. It may also be an example of where you're doing something outside of parameters specifically set by the mutual. And we'll give examples of this as well once we advance forward in Vector. So when you're actually building a quote, you want to first start by giving it a quote name. Now, I will tell you that you, the agent, has the ability to name your quotes whatever you want. I will tell you from my experience, though, most mutuals and their agents utilize some form of the applicant's name. This might be something you want to run by Heartland to see if they have any preference. But again, you do have the ability to name it anything you want. But most people utilize maybe a first and last name only, first initial and a last name. The reason you may not want to name every quote is because by the time you have 20 quotes, if you need to go find something at a quick glance, if they're all named the exact same name, without physically clicking inside each and every one, it's going to be very hard for you, the agent, to determine which quote you're looking for. Once you've given it a name, you want to pick an effective date. Now, when I first click into this box, today's date is going to be selected. If, however, though, I have an effective date of May 1st, I'd simply navigate forward in my calendar, choose May 1st, and that's now my effective date. For today's purposes, though, I'm going to stick with today's date. Then our next item is actually choosing a policy type. So for today, I'm going to go ahead and pick the homeowner's policy. Once you choose that, beneath that you'll find your pay plan options. And then additionally below that, if there are any policy level discounts or surcharges available, you will notice those are right here. At the bottom of every screen, you're going to see 3 buttons: Save, Save and Continue, and Cancel. The Cancel button does just what it says. It cancels what you're working on. Biggest difference, though, between Save and Continue, when I click Save here, you're going to notice it saves what I'm working on, but it keeps me on my current screen, whereas Save and Continue is going to save what I'm working on, but then continue me forward onto the next screen. So when I click that, you'll now notice I am on the location screen. Here's a great example, too, of what I was referencing, where you will find that my message here on locations differs from what you saw on the policy screen. Again, that's because the messages correlate to whatever screen you're viewing. Also, you'll notice here at the top, these are all hyperlinks, so I can click location to jump forward. I can click policy to jump backwards. Over here on the right, you'll also notice there's a next arrow, and then I can also go back with the previous arrow. I will tell you, though, that both these hyperlinks as well as these arrows, they are for navigational purposes only. If you're actually looking to save something, you're going to need to utilize either the Save or the Save and Continue button. Once we're on the location screen, kind of like with your quote nickname, you have the ability to physically give each description its own name. Now, by default, the system is going to drop in location 1. If you were adding a second location, location 2, 3, 4, and so on. Once again, this might be something you'd want to talk with Heartland about, but if for some reason you wanted to name this John's house, John's garage, John's barn, his outbuilding, whatever the case may be, you could do that. Most mutuals and their agents, though, just stick with the defaults of 1, 2, 3, and so on for however many locations they have. Beneath that, you will then find the ability to go ahead and input the property address. And then down here at the bottom, I'm only going to click Save because I don't want to leave the location screen just yet. If you were to add a second location, all you would do is come over here, click Add Location. You'll notice it defaults to location 2, and you would just continue following that process. Our next screen here is the Report screen. Now, this is where you, the agents, are going to go ahead and actually order reports based on the applicants. Now, what I will tell you here, I believe this process is being wrapped up by the mutual right now as we speak, meaning I don't think that reports is going to be available as of today when your access gets turned on. This should be done here very shortly, and I would imagine the mutual will send some type of correspondence out to you as soon as this reports feature is done. If you need a report run in the meantime, you can contact the mutual and they can run it for you. And then one of the ways you'll know whether you have it or not is if you try running a report and it gives you a message of essentially you can't do this, please contact the mutual. You'll want to reach out to them. They then can let LexisNexis know and they can get the ball rolling and make sure you get credentialed with them if you're not. Again, at that point then you would just look for some type of contact, I would imagine, from LexisNexis, and then you can gain access to reports from there. On this screen, though, if you were to do it, you can read this message, but essentially I'm understanding and accepting these terms, and I'm going to click Accept. On this screen then is where you would input the information of the individual or individuals you were hoping to run a credit report on. Today, though, I'm not actually going to pull someone's credit, so I am going to go ahead and just choose to bypass this with this override rating tier. This is something, though, that I'm just having access to since we don't actually want to order someone's report. You, though, will only have the option of ordering reports since that's what you, the agent, needs to do. Once we leave the report section, our next screen is the coverage screen. Now on this screen, you will notice 2 different sections. You're going to see my location 1 and then this other coverage section. You really don't want to add any coverage here to the other coverage section unless it is truly coverage that is not location specific. The majority of the time, all coverage is going to be tied to a specific location, and in that event, you want to use this button here that says Add Coverage to this location. And let's just pretend we had 3 locations on this policy. You would see an Add Coverage to this location button next to all 3 locations, so that way you could specifically choose which location you were adding your coverage to. Now, someone just referenced that you lost audio. I just want to find out from those on the call, if a few people could comment, is that just the individual that wrote that message that lost audio, or can no one hear me right now? If you have not lost audio and you can hear me, please type some type of message indicating that you can hear me, so that way I know audio is not gone for everyone. And it looks like someone just confirmed that they can hear me and see my screen quickly, so I'm just going to respond to that individual and let them know that it must be something on their computer, as it looks like others are saying they can hear me. Thank you. Okay, since I know that we're all back, what I'm going to say now, just to backtrack, I apologize for that. I just wanted to make sure people could hear me, in fact. When we're on this coverage screen, we're adding coverage to this specific location, location 1. You'll then see on this screen you're presented with your different options of coverage that you can add. Everything here is tucked nicely and neatly under these headings to make it easy for you to locate what you need. We're going to start by choosing a dwelling. So I'm going to go ahead and choose my dwelling. Here's an example of, notice when I chose that dwelling code, the mutual has added specific help text. So you're seeing that automatically display right here. If they had not added any help text, it would have simply just read no help available. What you want to do then here is first begin by putting in your coverage amount. Now, once you enter in your coverage amount, I advise you to either click outside that box with your mouse or simply tab with your keyboard. You do not want to hit enter. If you hit enter, your screen's going to do something kind of funky and it's likely going to error out. That's because you don't want to be hitting enter as you're going through the different screens here. Simply just click outside of boxes with your mouse or tab with your keyboard, works perfectly fine. From here, once I enter in my coverage amount, you'll notice the included coverage section automatically populates with all of my included coverage and the percentages in which it gets. Beneath that, I will find any additional coverage that I may want to add. So for example, you'll see some have a white box. This indicates that you need to both check it that you want to include it, but then fill in some type of coverage amount. Whereas items that only have a box to include but are grayed out essentially, those are items that you don't fill in an amount because an amount is not needed. But here you'll notice all of your additional coverage. You'll notice all of your different earthquake coverage is all listed here. It's broken up by dwelling or other structures, farm versus masonry, and then the zones in which are available to you. So just make note of that when choosing the proper earthquake coverage. And then down at the very bottom, you will notice there's a discounts and surcharges section. So this is where you're going to find any discounts or surcharges that are available based on the dwelling that you chose. I'm only going to click Save here because I want to continue to add more coverage. So let's then say maybe I have some equipment breakdown coverage I want to add. I'm going to go ahead and click Save there. And maybe I have some inland marine coverage I want to add. Let's say I have a boat And with the Masters having taken place this weekend, I'm a pretty big golfer, so I'm going to go ahead and choose my golf equipment. Okay, and then when you're all done adding your coverage, if there's nothing more that you need to add, you're ready to move forward onto your next screen, which is the liability screen. So I'm going to click that. Now when I click liability, you'll notice my carrier automatically populates for me, and the first thing I need to do is choose my liability type. We'll go ahead and choose our liability type here. It looks like my screen is just doing something real quick, so let me just refresh this. When you choose your liability type, you'll then be presented with the different main liability coverage limits, as well as your medical coverage limits, and then your damage to property of others. Same thing at the bottom of the liability screen. If there are any liability discounts or surcharges available for you, they will populate right down here. I'm then going to go ahead and click Save and Continue because I want to move on to my additional liability screen. And then same thing, just like we saw with property, you're going to have these neat little sections where all of your coverage is housed. So let's say I want to go ahead and choose that boat of mine. Maybe I also have a really nice golf cart. And you would just keep clicking Add Optional Liability to throw on any type of additional coverage that you want. When you're all done adding your additional liability, the final screen to go to in Vector is the quote summary screen. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. When the quote summary screen loads, you'll notice on the left-hand side are all of my deductible options, and on the right-hand side is the total policy premium for each one. If you click Show Details, it's going to show you a breakdown of all of your coverage, the coverage amounts, as well as the premium for each item for both property and then for liability as well. You finish going through an entire quote with an applicant and you want to present them with a formal quote presentation to either email to them or print out and hand to them. How do you go about doing that? Well, this little blue circle with the white quotes inside, and when I hover over it, it says print a formal quote. You're going to click that. By default, all of your deductibles are chosen. Now, if for some reason they only wanted to see the 1,000, you would simply uncheck the 2,500 if you don't want it. If they want a side-by-side comparison, you would keep both selected. The prepared for box here is always going to default to whatever you've named your quote. So again, if you recall at the very beginning of this, I told you how most people utilize some form of the applicant's name. If, though, you did not do that and you were not formal and you gave it a nickname just like I did, but now you want to go ahead and be a bit more formal, you can go ahead and put in the applicant's name. The producer info will always default to the name of the individual signed in. So since we're utilizing my username and password, you're noticing my name was here. If someone from the mutual's office were signed in, you would see their name. And for you, the agent, you will find your name associated with your username and password here. Some agents, though, they like to make this producer info not be an individual's name, but the name of their agency as a whole. If you want to go ahead and change that to the name of your agency, you can. And then finally, this comment section is just a place where we provide you, the agent, with the ability to add comments or things you want to pass along to the applicant. When you're all done adding your comments, you're going to go ahead and click OK. Once you click OK, a new tab is going to open. Once this tab populates, it's going to be a PDF copy of that formal quote presentation. Like any other PDF, you have the ability to print it. You could download it so you could save it and send it off in an email. You'll notice the mutual's logo is up here, the name of the mutual, the type of policy you're doing. Here you'll find who it's prepared for. Here's either your name or your agency's name. And then you'll find, again, all of your coverage. And then now a side-by-side look of the $1,000 versus the $2,500 deductibles. Here's that message that you went ahead and input right here. And then beneath that, you'll find if there are any comments or messages coming from the mutual directly, the box below yours is where you'll find the message from the mutual themselves. When you're all done with this, you would simply just click the X to close out that tab. So with that being said, that is the end of the quote side of Vector. Now, before we go ahead and move on to the application side of Vector, we're going to pause to open it up for any questions that you have for me. Again, as a reminder for maybe some of those that joined us late, a little control panel would have opened up on your computer screen. There's a question section towards the bottom. Feel free to type your questions in there. I'll read the question off to everyone in the group so you're aware of what it is we're talking about and answering. If for some reason some of you are signed in with your phone, there is a little icon that allows you to raise your hand. If I see your hand raised, I will go ahead and unmute your line and allow you to try to speak if that's what you'd prefer. It's just that sometimes there are audio issues on the end user's side and it doesn't always work. So that's one of the reasons the question section works great. But now we'll go ahead and open it up to any questions you have for me. At this present time, I am not seeing any questions coming through. I will give it maybe another 20 to 30 seconds in case someone is in the middle of typing, as I don't want to bypass your questions. But if there are truly no questions, we will simply move forward and on to the application side of Vector. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions, so we are just going to move forward with the application. I will let you know that we will be pausing at the very end of the application when this webinar is done to go through any and all remaining questions that you have. But one thing to keep in mind, don't feel that you need to wait until the end to type your question. If you think of something as I'm saying it, feel free to type it, and we can always go back and answer it once we're all done. So the applicant indicates to you that they're ready to move forward with the application. How do you go about doing that? Well, beneath each deductible, you're going to notice a white piece of paper with a green and white plus sign inside it. When I hover over it, it says Start Application. You're going to go ahead and click Start Application. When you do that, a dialog box is going to open up. You can take a moment to read that if you'd like, but I'm going to essentially summarize what we're doing here. We're basically asking you, the agent, are you sure you want to continue? And we're really doing that for two primary reasons. One, it may be possible that you simply were moving your mouse across your screen, accidentally clicked that icon, had no intentions to begin an application. If that's the case, it would be a real bummer if you had no option but to do an application. So if you didn't want to, you simply click cancel. The other reason we're asking you is, as you'll notice here, we are on the quote summary screen. There is an application summary screen, which is where you'll find all of this same information as well as some more, plus having the ability to submit it on to the mutual for their underwriting review. But as you'll see here in just a moment, in order to access that screen, there's going to be a series of required things that you must do. So because of that, we're just saying to you, the agent, are you sure you want to continue? For our purposes today, I know I want to do an application, so I'm going to go ahead and click OK. When I click OK, you'll notice Vector really hasn't changed that much. It's the same screen. It's just that now you'll notice there's more screens at the top, as well as the majority of screens are either red with an X or blue with a green check mark. Notice again how what I was talking about, the summary screen, is actually grayed out. I can't even access it even if I wanted to. And you won't be able to gain access to that screen until you take care of every red X that you see. So we're going to start here on the first screen, the policy screen, and take care of my requirements. Anything in bold, as you can see with mailing address, bill to, etc., bold means required. So we're going to go ahead and make sure we take care of this required item. Notice how bill to is required, but I'm going to go ahead and skip it, and I want to click Save. Vector knows that bill to is required, so it's going to give you an error. It actually won't let you save and complete the screen. So I need to come down to bill to, choose my bill to method. Now when I click Save, my red X on the policy screen goes away, and that's what we want. On to my next screen, which is the applicant screen. Now before beginning here, I want to point out to you, if you're doing more than one individual, say we were doing a husband and a wife here, only one can be a primary applicant, the other must be an additional applicant. For our purposes, we don't care who's the primary or the additional. If you think Heartland may have a preference on that, that may be another example of something you want to double check with them. Another thing you cannot do, you can't try putting in two people's names on the same line. Even if for some reason it would all fit, the system is not going to like you saying two people are one person as the primary applicant. So just go ahead and put in your information. Again, for today, I'm only putting in the required information to save time. I'm going to click Save. If you were to add an additional applicant, you'd simply click Add Applicant here, and then you could fill in all of the additional applicants' information as well. This location screen, even though I don't have a red X, I want to walk you through it in the event you do get a red X, just to let you know what's going on here. We're actually using a feature of Google Mapping that's pinpointing the latitude and longitude of that location based on the address you gave. Now again, sometimes Vector is going to throw a red X here, and it's going to be something you have to do. Even in the event right now where I don't have a red X, I still advise on every location at least checking where Google has dropped that pinpoint, because sometimes they think they got it right and they might be very close, but they're not actually correct. So you'll begin by clicking the pencil. Now let's just pretend I had a red X here where I was required to do this. A lot of times too, you'll find the initial view is going to be way far zoomed out like that. You would then just click this little plus sign to start zooming in to see where in fact Google dropped that pinpoint. Now here it got it correct, but a lot of times you might find it's like right here in the middle of the street. Like obviously the middle of the street is not my house, so you can pick up this icon and move it all around. Let's just say it had not been on the building. I would come here, I would drop it on my house. Now once you've done that, you would come down here and click Save. If you had a red X, the red X would go away and you would be good to go. The report screen we already went through on the quote side of things, so there's no need to go through that again. I'm not really going to spend any time on the coverage screen because the same thing, this is the exact same coverage screen we've already seen. The only thing I'll point out is that even though you're in an application, if you need to add more coverage, you can still do that. You can utilize the pencil to edit coverage, and if you need to delete something, you simply click the red delete icon. Our next red X is the coverage detail screen. This is where you're going to find additional information that is needed for the dwelling. So I have a dwelling here. I'm going to click the pencil because there's a red X I need to resolve. Once inside here, there's going to be a series of information you need to provide the mutual. Again, in Vector, think of bold information as all of your requirements. So I'm just going to quickly fill this out. As you can see, I am just tabbing through with my keyboard, though I could also use my mouse to click and choose the different coverage that I want. If you didn't miss anything and click Save, you'll be good to go. If you missed anything, again, it's going to trigger that error. So notice I forgot to talk about my basement. Let's say it's a fully finished basement. Come down here, now click Save. My red X goes away and I'm good to proceed. Just like with the coverage screen, we're really not going to spend any time on liability or additional liability other than to say I could edit my coverage. If I need to delete it altogether, I could do that. And then the same thing on the additional liability screen. I could add more. I could edit what already exists or delete it altogether. The reason you're not seeing a red X or a green check mark on the additional interest screen is because you can truly think of this screen as optional, meaning if there's a mortgagee or lien holder you need to add, please add them. If there is no mortgagee or lien holder and no one holds an additional interest, simply jump over this screen and go on to the underwriting screen. If you needed to add a mortgagee or lien holder, you'd simply click Add Interest. You'd fill in all the information needed. Down here at the bottom, you would click the plus sign of whatever the coverage is that has an interest in it to move it from the left side here over to the right-hand side, and then you'd click Save. That's how you'd go about saying, hey, ABC Bank is the mortgagee tied to my dwelling. For our purposes today, we're going to say there are no additional interests, so I'm now ready to move forward onto the underwriting screen. Now, throughout Vector, I've been proclaiming the message of basically required versus not required. On the underwriting screen, though, all information is required. You don't have the choice or the option to go ahead and skip over things. So I'm going to go ahead and just quickly fill out the underwriting questions, and then I will just point out a few items for you before proceeding. Same thing, if you didn't miss anything when you click save, you shouldn't get any error messages. If you happen to forget a question, you'd get an error message. And then throughout this underwriting screen, there's going to be 3 different types of questions. You're going to have something where it's just a fill in the blank, where it's a question and you just type in the answer. You might have some questions that are multiple choice, meaning if my swimming pool is in ground, has a diving board, and has a slide, you would check all of those. And then the majority of your questions are going to be yes, no. And then based on something being yes or no, an explanation box that's required may populate. So question 21, do you have any other insurance with this company? If I say no, there's nothing else to provide, but if I say yes, there's an explanation that I need to give. Also notice here at the top, the loss history tab is grayed out. That's because the loss history tab is actually tied to the loss question. So in question 19 here, have you had any losses? If I now go ahead and say yes, notice when I click save and continue, Vector is aware of the fact that there are losses, and it will now prompt you to enter in the loss information. From here, you would put in your loss date, your loss type, and then the amount. I'm only going to click save here just to show you if you have any other losses to add, you'd simply click add loss. We're going to say that was my only loss. So now as you can see throughout Vector, every screen is blue with a green check mark, which is what we want. And the summary screen is now clickable, where I can access the final screen in Vector. When I click the summary screen, you will notice, again, all of my deductibles are on the left, or the one I chose rather, the total policy premium for it. If I want to see the other deductible, I would then click show more deductibles, and I would see that as well as the premium for it. Now, a common question I sometimes get is, well, what happens if we get all the way through the application and now at the end the applicant decides that they want to change their deductible? How do they go about doing that? Well, if you navigate back to the policy screen, you would have noticed there's a deductible drop-down. You could choose $2,500. Now, because I'm making an actual change, remember I need to save my changes. I can't just click the summary tab to go back, or it won't save my change. I'm going to physically click save. And now when I go back to the summary screen, you will notice my $2,500 deductible is my new chosen deductible. Now, we are just about finished with the application, but I want to point out a few more icons and options for you, and we'll start going through those right now. So up here, you'll notice this little messages icon. So this is where you, the agent, has the ability to communicate with the mutual. And for Heartland, this is their preferred method of where you will communicate with them. So if you have things you want to relay, information, questions, just dialogue that needs to go back and forth, all of that history will be contained inside this messages icon. So when you click this, you're then going to go ahead and click new message, and you might say, you know, dear mutual, I have some questions, and you list those questions. When you click post, 2 things happens. 1, the mutual is going to be notified via email of the fact that there's a new question, comment, message of some kind in this particular application, and as you can see, the very next time my screen refreshes, it indicates there's 1 message in here. Now, once the mutual gets that message, they might decide to reply to you in here. When they click post, 2 things happens. 1, you, the agent, are notified via email that there's a new notification for you. a new message in this particular application, and as you can see, as soon as my screen refreshes, there's now 2 messages in here. Now, as I said, this does keep a running history of all of your communication. So whether it's over the course of 2 days, 1 week, a month, all information will be contained in here. And when you access it, both you and the mutual will be able to see when messages were sent, who they were sent from, who they went to, and what the message was. So again, in today's day and age, I wouldn't be shocked if your inbox, like mine, is filled with hundreds of emails a day. There's nothing wrong with email, but sometimes since things can get lost in translation, if there is one reliable place you can count on that all communication can be kept inside each quote or application, this is a great area to have communication and dialogue. Next to that, you're going to see a paperclip. This is where you're going to go about uploading and adding any attachments you have for this application. So over here, I'm going to click the upload button. When I do that, it's going to want to access my computer. I'll go to my pictures. Maybe I have a picture of my house and my outbuilding. I will add both of those. Now, by default, it's going to be the name of whatever the file was named on your computer. If you want to change it to be something specific, you can type in a new description that will be saved when you upload it to Vector. You're then going to click Upload. When you click Upload, you'll see the 2 documents I wanted to add, both a picture of my house as well as a picture of my outbuilding have been added, and they're now in here. When you're done adding all of your attachments, whether it's pictures, signed documents, PDF copy of your property valuation, whatever the case may be, all of those documents will be uploaded here. When you're done, you just close out that tab. You're right back in the Vector area where you were quoting. And as you can see, the next time my screen uploads, Vector also knows there's 2 attachments out here. Now, I will also let you know, as the mutual does desire to have you run your RCTs, those property valuations, you're going to continue to run them in the same manner in which you're currently doing, accessing them from the mutual's website. And like I said, a lot of mutuals I work with, the PDF copy of that, a great place to add it is right here in this paperclip. Now, beside that paperclip, you'll notice there's an option to download a PDF version of the binder. When I click that, again, another PDF is going to generate of the binder itself. Could print this, download, save it, whatever the case may be. We'll skip over the submit button here for just a moment, and I want to access the PDF version of the application. So when you click this, Vector is generating a PDF version of the application filled out from all of your information. I always tell agents to be patient when they click that. You may see it takes anywhere between 3 seconds to a minute to load. It's really dependent upon, 1, your computer speed, and secondly, the sheer size of the application. So we did a relatively small application here. If, however, though, I had 25 locations and each location had 5 dwellings or outbuildings or whatever the case is on it, it's going to be a much larger PDF, and it might take a little bit longer to generate. Again, though, like any other PDF, you could print this, download, and save it. And just as we scroll through, you'll see all of our information, the applicant, all of their coverage, my dwelling questions, my additional items, all of my underwriting questions are then here as well. Your liability section, any losses you may have, and then the signature and disclosure page. And now, if for some reason the mutual are rolling on or adding any additional documents, you would find those at the end of the PDF. So right now my PDF is 6 pages. Let's just pretend there was some type of additional form based on coverage I added that needed to be rolled on for me to fill out. Page 7 may be those additional documents. Finally, when you're all said and done and you're ready to submit this on to Heartland for their underwriting review, you're going to click the Submit Application button. Now when I click this final checklist is going to populate for me, and these are the items that I need to be sure that I've done. If I've not gone ahead and done these things, I would simply just return and go do whatever it is I need to do. But if I took care of doing each one of these, I'm going to put a check in each box of all the things that I've done. And when I'm all done, I click I agree. Now when you click I agree, two things will happen. One, the mutual is going to be notified via email of the fact that you submitted an application. Secondly, you'll notice up here right now, since it's not submitted, the status of our application is in progress. You'll see this status change to submitted, as well as once you submit something, you're in a view-only mode. So what will happen is where right now I can add more coverage, I can edit things, you will not see the ability to add or change anything, and all of the pencils in Vector become an eyeball, indicating you're in a view-only mode. If you need to make changes or want to make changes, or the mutual is going to require changes of you, they will then release the application back into your control. You can make whatever changes are necessary and then resubmit it on to them once again. With that being said, that is the end of the Vector presentation, both the quote and application side of things. We will now conclude this webinar by opening it up to any and all remaining questions you have for me. While we're waiting to see if there are any questions, I just want to run through a couple other items. One, we have gone ahead and recorded this webinar. So let's just say a month from now, you need a Vector refresher, or maybe you have an agent in your office who missed today's webinar because they couldn't be here. Or let's just say maybe this summer you hire a new agent and you need them to learn about Vector. Probably in about 2 days or so, a video copy of this will be complete. We will provide that video to Heartland, and then if you, the agent or agents, want to get a copy of that or access it in any way, you would simply just reach out to Heartland and they can provide you with the video. Additionally, I did get confirmation that it sounds like the report section is going to be complete today when you go ahead and get access. So that reports tab that I referenced here should be available for all of you agents. The only thing that I would say that you'll find, as I had presented, if you're an agent who currently is not credentialed with LexisNexis, Vector will know that. If you try running a report, you're going to get a message saying that you need to contact the mutual. In that event, again, contact Heartland. They then can get the ball rolling with LexisNexis, and then just you, the agent, expect probably some form of contact from LexisNexis to get that credentialing process taken care of. And it looks like a question may have popped in. Looks like there's a message being passed along from the mutual. They just want to reiterate this message section might be a great area If you want them to inspect the property, so I'm assuming here that, let's say you're not going through with the application yet, where you'll be formally submitting it to them, but if you're just in the process of quoting, I would envision, and you want them to inspect the property for you, the messages area would be a great place to ask them to inspect the property for this current quote you're working on.